Well, This Sporting Life being put into the Sound Archive, or the National Film and Sound Archive, was a bit of a shock, really, because I didn't realise it was up for any sort of recognition in this way. The fact that you doing this work for 20 years doesn't seem to make it particularly valuable to my mind, but, you know, I do think that it does chart, in those 20 years, changes in Australian attitudes towards sport and sports commentary, and so therefore, you know, it's a valuable thing for the Film and Sound Archive to have. Very difficult to sum up how the commentating reflects the tempo of the times in a very dramatic way, and the sport, of course, being the stuff that's been commentated, reflects the tempo of the times as well. The key thing to understanding Roy and HG's work is the questions that HG asks Roy are the only things that's scripted, and then they're often scripted in the area of, can we talk about changes to rules in rugby league? That's as much as you get of the question. Is there anything in the current state of horse racing in Australia with regard that there's too many jockeys and not enough races? That might be as much as scripted. The rest is based on a series of questions that HG always asks Roy. And remember, of course, is that HG asks Roy the question. If Roy asks HG the question, it falls apart, because that's not the way that when you tune in to listen to sports commentary, you only hear one person asking the expert the questions. The expert doesn't ask the presenter, the ball-by-ball commentator, the questions. So to answer the question, very little of it is scripted except the questions that we're going to ask, or the areas that we're going to talk about. The broadcasts are absolutely, if I use the word unique, with absolutely the soft and hard, but they're unique in the sense of that the National Film and Sound Archive has got the copies of the, it's got the script, it's got the direction, it's got the production, it's got the execution, it's got everything in the work that it's recorded in the National Film House. They don't exist as scripts. There's a tiny bit of scripting that would go on around writing the production, like, you know, if we wrote ads, which often bob up because it was a parody of a commercial sporting program, so it did have blocks of ads built into it. They're scripted and recorded, and you can find the scripts of those, you know, still existing. But the rest of it, the program itself, is a completely one-off experience. Well, the pattern of broadcasting changes dramatically over the time. In my lifetime, it's changed extraordinarily, and it is undergoing rapid change at the moment. The use of podcasts and apps and you know, all sorts of different means of broadcasting. It's very important that the National Film and Sound Archive record this changing pattern of activity in this area that's going on now. We don't know how this is going to turn out. My suspicion is that a lot of this stuff will fall by the wayside fairly quickly, but you would still need to record it to sort of record all the different aspects to it. So as if you look at technology, I've always felt as though the next bit of technology, I don't think this way anymore, but when I was younger, I used to think the next bit of technology, that'll be it. But now we've been changing technology so quickly that you think that in 10 years' time, we still may be evolving this pattern of technology and the use of this technology in ways that are completely unimaginable. I often think we're on the way to something. We're not quite there yet. Where I think that it's going is that it allows people like Roy and HG, who aren't a mainstream act, to exist in a space where people who only want to listen to them will dial them up. Meaning, if you've got an app, you go to the app and think, oh, Roy and HG are doing this. Okay, we'll press on the app. And at the moment, we're able to do things like cover rugby union, rugby league, AFL on free-to-air radio, or, you know, whatever that means, and also on apps. So as if you're in, say, I don't know, you know, if you're in some parts of the world where you can't hear the radio, you can hear us on the app, or if you're on the bus, you can hear us on the app as well. And so what happens is that we're now able to avoid the problem of ratings and the battle of ratings, because the only people who want to hear Roy and HG will tune in. Now, this means that this has changed the game quite dramatically. We've done a lot of work for Samsung, and you think, why is Samsung interested in us? Samsung make their app available to all tablets and phones and so on, including Apple. And the big battle for Samsung is to get Apple users to talk about Samsung products on their phones. And this is there's a term of marketing, ambush marketing or something like that it is, which is the most valuable, apparently, sort of marketing that you can get. And that's what they want. They want people using Apple products to talk about Samsung things. The big change, I think, in our lifetime, which is a bit hidden yet, is the role of branding. So in other words, instead of being like you see these ads, a classic is that I bump into all the time is Chevron. I have not a clue what Chevron are trying to tell me with their ads. They seem to be trying to tell me that they're a responsible corporate organisation, but when I read the ad, I can't see what they want me to go and buy their petrol, if so where, and all this sort of stuff. But it's just a branding idea. It's a sort of a generalised sort of thing. So as you find, branding is becoming big. Now I think we're sort of moving from specific ads into branding, and we're moving beyond branding now, where and a gross sort of sense of branding, which is still sort of a bit awkward and still grates with the community, is like the Australian cricket team being sponsored by VB or something like that. That sort of is now a bit old school. And so what you're looking at is a sort of more sophisticated joining together of the idea of product and people who are going to purchase it. But having said that, the best one that I come across is this idea of Apple users talking about Samsung products. You can wander around London and you can go to places where you think, well, you don't think, but you sort of get the idea that Australians would gather, meaning, like Westminster or something like that. But you can be up on the Northern Line and people will bump into you and say, and then you realise they're English people, and you think, well, how did you find out about us? And they will have managed the water polo team or something like that at the Olympics in 2000 or whatever it is. And you find this just catches you completely by surprise. You've got no idea that you're just looking at the people, and they're all people just sitting on the tube, and all of a sudden out of the blue somebody will come up and start talking to you. And of course often the Australians are a bit lost, or sort of glad to see somebody from home sort of thing. But generally speaking, when you get out of the tourist areas, being recognised is just odd, extremely odd. When you make a television show that's there for 2 hours every night for a fortnight, people get the idea, oh, that's what you do, even though they don't really have a clue what even though they know you work in the media, they're not sure what you do. But then a month later, it's dropped off. A year later, it's completely dropped off. And 2 years later, you can walk around and no one will notice you at all, unless they're real fans.